The Eddy, limited 8-part series that debuted on Netflix a couple of weeks ago. I took interest in it for three reasons. One, it was partly directed by Damien Chazelle, known for Whiplash, La La Land, and First Man. Chazelle directed the first two episodes of this one. Two, it stars Joanna Kulik, who was great in Zimna Wojna. And three, its main focus is jazz, which I tend to enjoy very, very much. And even going into it, I heard it got mixed reviews, people weren't happy with it, but I decided to see for myself. And my opinion is somewhere in the middle. I'll say right off the bat that regardless of objective quality, the series is a tough sell, difficult to recommend to wider audiences. I mean, it's a rather serious drama about a jazz club in Paris that alone, makes it a rather niche. It's also not entirely in English. It's partly in English, partly in French, but other languages also make appearances due to the extremely diverse cast. There's a bit of Polish, there's a bit of Spanish, Arabic, I think Serbian as well. Now, for me and for example, for Polish audiences, I imagine that's not a problem because we're used to using subtitles for series, but Americans may have trouble. And then there's the fact that the series doesn't really have a strong main protagonist and main storyline. I mean, okay, you can make a case that Elliot, the club owner, and the shady dealings behind the club are the most prominent of the subplots. But I'd argue that it's still not prominent enough to really be the one. Instead, we have a whole ensemble of characters. In fact, each episode is titled with a name of the currently featured character. And every one of them has their own drama in their lives that's going on. And all those little subplots are sometimes disjointed, sometimes discordant, but do occasionally come together and mix and intertwine to create this a bit complicated narrative of the titular club, the Eddy. I think that this structure is simultaneously the biggest strength and maybe the biggest weakness of the series. Strength because it makes the whole show function like a jazz piece, essentially. We have these characters who have their own solo stuff to deal with that on the surface doesn't mesh with the rest. And from time to time, those individual pieces come together and suddenly it all clicks. And it's very elegant that the main tool used for bringing it together are the performances in the club. When the band actually does come together and plays together, plays music, those are the shining points. Those are the moments of harmony. The series also has a certain raw quality to it. I think it's in the way it's shot, with a lot of long takes, camera following the characters quite closely, and the fact that especially all of the music was actually recorded there live, which you definitely can see and appreciate. I also loved the music in general. It was written by Randy Kerber, who also plays a fictionalized version of himself in the series as the band pianist. But it's not all rainbows. There are problems as well. First off, the fact that these individual stories feel so disjointed for a lot of the time makes it difficult to really get into the show. I mean, it's not like any of them on its own is bad. It's just that they don't feel like parts of a bigger whole apart from those key moments. For me, it took about 3 episodes before I really got into it. As a result, up until then, I was kind of forcing myself to sit through the series. Another reason why that happens is the way the characters are written, and what I mean by that is, there's no other way to put it. Most of them are real assholes. On the one hand, that's good in a story to have flawed characters, ones who are imperfect, but the ones here, for a long time, I struggled to pick just even one that I would want to root for, and I couldn't. All of them are just raging dickheads, and eventually, some of them do make amends, and you get to sympathize with them, but it's way later than you'd expect. So I can easily see people dropping the series early on, and for good reason. And also, let me stress this out. That's the writing, because the actors themselves, the performances are great all the way through. Most importantly, they all have great chemistry with one another, which is important in an ensemble piece like this one. Speaking of the writing, there's also a more significant problem, which is that the series doesn't really go anywhere in the long run. There are seeds planted for several of the subplots that make you expect big things to happen with them, and then they don't. You just wait for some major change, for some sort of explosion, and it never comes. It feels unfinished, like someone didn't really know what to do with the storylines once they're open. Worst thing is, that goes for that one plot line which I mentioned, which seems to wanted to be the main one and the heaviest one, let's say, the series basically ends without ever resolving it. It's almost like there's a final episode missing or another season is coming, but there isn't. That's it. That's all. That's all we're ever going to get. And let's be fair, these issues I'm talking about, this is not minor stuff. This is significant stuff. Normally, even one of them would be enough for me to maybe cross the series out completely. But the thing is, I really, really, really wanted to like it. I love the idea of it, and I like how ambitious it tries to be with what I mentioned, with modeling its structure after a jazz piece. And like I said, there are individual things in here that are brilliant. The music, the acting, the character chemistry, the cinematography, and the feel and atmosphere of Paris, unlike the mainstream Paris that's often shown in media. And I guess in a way I did like it, but I finished it and I still struggle to think of a single person that I could recommend this to. Because you really need a ton of goodwill to get through it, and even then it has some pretty significant requirements to allow you to enjoy it. You need to like jazz, you need to not be discouraged by the lack of traditional single plotline narrative. You need to be willing to spend time in the Eddy, even though it feels like it's just that, like it's just spending time, and at the end of the day, the story as a whole does almost nothing. And you also need to be forgiving to its heavy and sometimes even dark nature, and patient with its characters. If you meet all of those requirements, then yes, you can enjoy the Eddy for what it is, but I fear not a lot of people will. Which is a shame, because it feels like there was a lot of potential to the series, and some of it was completely wasted, but some of it was capitalized on. But at the end of the day, it's just not enough.